Welcome back to the Hoops Temple podcast. Y'all know me, Nathan Schwartz. Joining me from New Zealand, DJ Austin Bowl, aka Dylan. How's it going?
DJ Augustine, you got to put some respect on 2010's backup point guard extraordinaire, DJ Augustine.
Oh, dude, totally is Augustine. This is why I wear glasses, folks. Even though I'm currently wearing them, I just quick looked at that. I was like, oh my gosh. Well, we were battling some serious lag issues here, so if you're watching on YouTube, maybe check out the pod where I can do some editing and make our audio not quite as difficult to deal with. But we finally have a finals. We have the hipster finals. We have the deep cut NBA sicko finals with two young stars, the future point guard of Team USA versus our neighbors to the north, the current point guard of Team Canada, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I had this all neatly lined up, and I was gonna work us through this matchup, but with how bad the lag is, I've shut down everything else on my computer other than Chrome for this. So I don't have anyone that's lined up, but I wanted to go player by player through the key unit guys for each team and see at what point the Pacers have an advantage, because I'm trying here, but
okay.
I'm really struggling to find an advantage or a way to make a strong case for the Pacers, because I want the Pacers to win. I want this to be Pacers in 6 or 7, whatever it needs to be for them to win in this at home. I think 6 is the home victory. But let's just go through it. The top guys, the best guys from each team, despite what the Eastern Conference Finals MVP says. We've got Shai versus Tyrese Halliburton. Dylan, who has the advantage here?
Before we do that, can we touch on the Finals MVP? Are you in agreement that it's kind of ridiculous?
Yes. I do love the clip of them starting to announce it. Tyrese going from all smiles, throwing up the peace signs, stepping forward, and there's like, oh, not me. Okay,
yeah, he's like, I averaged 25 and 10 and single-handedly won us one of the games in this series, and every player that scores is off of the defense reacting to me. How am I not Finals MVP? I forget where you stood on this issue, but did you feel the same about the Iguodala Finals MVP?
I'm 100% in the camp that unless the best player is egregious and the team wins without him, or one of the other
Jason
guys,
Tatum last year.
Yeah, or one of the other guys is just so supremely good. I'm okay with the best player not actually being the best player in the series and still winning this. Like Tim Duncan in 2007, Tony Parker wins it. They also sweep the Cavs, and Duncan kind of just takes a back seat and is pretty chill. Duncan was the best player over the 82-game season, over the first 3 rounds that were more competitive. In the final sweep, he's like, cool, I'm tired. Have fun, Tony. Go get it. I'm still giving that Finals MVP to Duncan. I'm still giving it to Tyrese. But I do actually really love Pascal Siakam getting love. I'm not upset that he's getting celebrated, because he does captain the defense. And his defensive impact is really important for the Pacers and how he plays.
Yeah, and not to mention he averaged 5 more points than Tyrese Halliburton, so that makes him clearly the better player. Shot like 10 of 20 on 3-pointers, which were all open because Tyrese Halliburton creates everything. But I think on the Finals MVP thing, you've got to recognize that even though the best player is not the one that's finishing all of these plays, or maybe even getting an assist that leads to all of these buckets, that them existing as a clearly better player makes everything else happen. And that's why Steph should have won Finals MVP, why Tyrese should have won it, and why it's actually fine that Tatum didn't, because him and Brown had a similar sort of role, and Brown clearly outplayed him. Which is why that one's fine. But we get the point guard matchup, the two best point guards in the NBA. No, can't get a reaction out of you there.
You know what? I still have so much love for Curry. Like it's hard to displace Curry in my mind as being one of the two best point guards in the league.
Mm-hmm.
But I hate to say it, but like there will never be a time where the point guard position is not incredibly stacked moving forward. Like historically looking back, it's always been really good. But just continuing to move forward, the point guard position will always be incredibly stacked. Curry wasn't even the other All NBA first teamer. That was Donovan Mitchell, who I guess is kind of a shooting guard, kind of a point guard, depending on. He's a score first point guard who's playing next to Garland, and so he's playing shooting guard. But like, then you also have Jalen Brunson. You had Cade, who made All NBA teams. Like, there's a lot of really good point guards. I don't hate the idea that Tyrese though is the second.
Not to mention that was actually a sneak diss against Luka because he's a Laker now, so I needed to diss him at every opportunity. Was the main crux of that outlandish statement.
You know, I always forget that Luka is a point guard because like he just doesn't have the body of one. He's like
because he looks like a power forward
and chunky. Yeah,
yeah.
He functionally is a ball dominant power forward in the same way like LeBron is a point forward. Like I don't know, you can put whatever position next to Luka. He's not. I don't think of him in the same category of Shea and Halliburton.
Do you think that me and Aaron are now entirely validated by going early on Halliburton and having him as a top 10 player when that was controversial? I've seen like arguments on social media that are like genuine of being like, is Halliburton now clearly better than De'Aaron Fox? It's like, what the hell are you talking about?
The answer is yes. I messaged Aaron and asked if he had any takes for us that he wanted to get out on the pod. And this is probably as good a time as any to get the first of Aaron's takes out, which is I hate Vivek for trading away the Halliburton.
I do want to bring one thing up though on that trade. The Sabonis for Halliburton, that's the headline. But what you've also got to remember is part of that trade coming back to Sacramento was Jeremy Lamb, who is now the assistant general manager for the Sacramento Kings. And so when you consider they've got that additional value,
are we talking about value?
Where you get
is trading for the Chicago Bulls added value? Is trading for DeMar DeRozan second, or is that an added
where you get noted NBA genius Jeremy Lamb back at the same time, where he can then date the owner's daughter and get this nepotism role within the organization. You've got to also consider that value coming back as well. I mean, at the end of the day, basketball is for fun, but real life is what matters. And if you're able to acquire a man that can make your daughter happy, isn't that better than a NBA Finals trip and a top 10 NBA player?
So what you're saying is Vivek, not owner of the year, but father of the year? Should he have the world's best dad mug? Does he deserve the best dad ever placard? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying, Nate, put it in the post.
Yeah. That's
send it up to Aaron and he can deliver it in person.
That's quality. But okay, the actual matchup, although these guys will never spend any time defending each other or playing against each other, but it's the driving force. I think this is a really interesting opposition. And I want to see every 90s point guard come out and be like, Halliburton's a true point guard. We love Halliburton because he is at least the modernization of a pass first point guard. He still puts up 20 a night, but he is best known for his passing. What game was it? Was it game 4 that he didn't score till halftime, but was moving the ball and still providing effective play without scoring. Pascal had 20 in the first half or 24. And on the other side of that, you have a two-way point guard, a defensive point guard, a mid-range master, another actual guy that 90s players should love because of his somewhat abandonment of the three-point line. and like desire to get into the mid range in Shea, but just moving right down the roster because we've got a lot of guys to compare here until we find two Indiana Pacer favorites. I think we're going to find one soon, but I want to find two.
Are we going to find one soon?
We're going to find one soon.
Anyway, let's
find
go.
one soon. But this matchup has to favor OKC. They have the best player, correct?
Yes, they have the best player, yes.
Okay. So that's game one goes to OKC. We're going to see how many games we make this series.
Okay.
Game two, the second best player, the other all-star, we've got Jalen Williams versus Pascal Siakam. Pascal, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. Jalen Williams, All NBA. The media declared he was a better player over the course of this season. I kind of do feel like Pascal's defense has been underrated. The way he has played in the playoffs, the versatility, his driving impact. Even just watching last night's game, there's a point where Pascal pokes the ball loose and the announcers start raving and do the instant replay. And they're like, look at Tyrese Haliburton. I'm like, this is clearly Pascal. Pascal poked the ball free on this drive. What are you talking about? Pascal versus J-Dub. How are you feeling about this matchup?
You mentioned that Pascal's an underrated defender. Jalen Williams is probably still an underrated defender in terms of his versatility and his ability to impact, the opposing team's plays in such a variety of ways, whether that's help defense, on-ball defense, rim protection from a dude that's freaking 6'5". And so I think he's still an underrated defensive player.
But is he better than Pascal? Is he good enough?
And also, I mean, they're probably fairly comparable, right? They're like slightly more dependent players. Like you don't necessarily want everything running through them, but efficient finishes, skilled in a diverse way, and then high impact defenders. Yeah, Jalen Williams is better.
Really? See, this is where I think
you don't think so? You're taking Pascal over.
Listen, I took Julius Randle over Jalen Williams last series, and we all know how that just worked out for me. I let my faith in Randle just blind me.
And that, I see what it is. You let your biases come in here. Julius Randle, former Laker, will always hold a place in your heart, and at the same time, Pascal Siakam, who won a championship with your Eastern Conference team, the Toronto Raptors, is now clouding your judgment.
I love Pascal. I love watching him play. I love the rumor now that Kawhi Leonard is considering going to Indiana. The what could have been that never was, to rejoin with Pascal Siakam if and whenever he becomes a free agent. I'm pretty sure it was an NBA Sentinel that initially posted it, but I saw someone else pick it up and say that, and I was like, oh, I kind of like that. But I do think Pascal does a better job of self-creation than J-Dub. And J-Dub has had some very nice playoff games and some true stinkers over the course of this run, and where he's not been able to get it going.
That is interesting. I actually wouldn't have thought this would even be a debate to be had. I thought Jalen Williams is like an All-NBA caliber player, and then Pascal Siakam is like your second or third option on a championship team.
And yet they've both arrived in the finals.
And yet they're both here. And Pascal with the Eastern Conference Finals MVP too.
Pascal with the Eastern Conference, 25 points per game. What did J-Dub do?
He didn't need to do anything because winning is so easy for him.
Exactly. He didn't do anything. All right, we're gonna call this one a push then, and just
okay. That's I wish Aaron was here to
tie break this.
Provide me my echo chamber, and back me up.
You know he would. You know he's incredibly high on J-Dub. I had the stats all pulled up. I don't have them anymore because of how laggy everything was getting. But I feel like there's a good case to be made that Pascal has been playing at well above of his normal mark and has been playing very well in these playoffs and gives you more value. We'll see if that continues into the playoffs. A lot of guys drop going up against OKC. It's a little bit easier to score efficiently when you are being defended by Karl Anthony Towns than when you are being defended by Alex Caruso, Dort, J Dub, Chet, Hartenstein, Shea. So we'll take that as it may. All right, so we got game 1 goes to OKC. Game 2 is somehow a push. Doesn't happen.
Game two is a tie.
Game 2 is a tie. We're going very European to this. Game 3, maybe not quite the third most important, guys. I think Pacers would make a argument that should be someone else, but we're going to do Chet versus Miles Turner. The spacing big men, the kind of last line of defense. I know Hardenstein's there, but it's a little bit cleaner. You got your rim protectors and your spacers, and it's kind of wild because in my mind, Miles Turner was kind of the archetype of what these like not unicorny bigs are, because they're not quite unicorns, but like the bigs who can protect the rim and shoot threes. But like, as young as Chet is, I feel like he's already better than Miles Turner at like that archetype and what you wanted. So
I agree. Like he is better at that role. But Miles Turner, the way that he's actually been able to succeed and really sort of come into his own is by actually breaking that archetype, by doing more than just blocking shots and shooting threes, doing more inside the arc, doing more, with the ball in his hand, making plays, making the right read, doing more than just spotting up and yeah. So he's almost like broken out of being a Miles Turner, and Chet has now succeeded him as your spot up shooting big man that is also a rim protection legend. And then Miles Turner has fixed or rather has dropped in terms of his rim protection. Like his numbers contesting shots, affecting shots are not as good as what you'd expect when you see like some of the high block numbers. Whereas Chet is like otherworldly. Like you look at what opponents shoot when he's on the floor or when he's at the rim, when he's contesting shots, and it's like, oh Jesus Christ, like no one can make anything whenever he's on the floor.
I didn't expect so much praise for Miles Turner from you.
Yeah,
the rim protection.
Not to mention he averaged a whopping 3 rebounds per game in the conference finals. So, he's providing all sorts of value.
I had to think about this with J Dub. Like, the Thunder have been so effective at winning that, like, do I care that some of their numbers aren't as good? Like, when you're just swarming and blowing teams out, like, like, when it's competitive and you have to go deep or you have to play your guys a lot of minutes, their numbers go up, or their per game numbers go up. So I do like that Turner has been more dynamic, more attacking, but Chet also has been a pretty solid rim runner, and he does function effectively as a cog in the offense, moving the ball. I think he's a little bit better. I don't want to say creator with the pass, but less disruptive. If the ball gets to him, it is a quick decision, whereas I don't think Turner is quite as quick of decision making. I would give this edge again to OKC.
Yeah. After all the praise that I've given Miles Turner, it is actually, I think the gap is pretty sizable.
Yeah. Fourth starter, the defensive disruptor piece, you have Aaron Nesmith versus Dort. Lou against Dort. Of course, Dort has been incredibly effective in blowing up the guards on the other teams. It's been kind of funny how much play Alex Caruso has gotten and how little of that has been against other teams' guards. Like Caruso was very effective at stopping Julius Randle and Jokic, but Dort has had the task of chasing around Jamal Murray for big chunks, chasing around Anthony Edwards for big chunks, and then Aaron Nesmith has basically been the man for defending Jalen Brunson and Donovan Mitchell. Who do you feel has the advantage here with the top defensive guys?
Is this the one that you were thinking was pretty close? Because this feels pretty close to me.
I was thinking Pascal had it, but this was my chance to get like two of them to try to force this to a game 6.
Yeah, I feel like this is a push as well. Great on-ball defenders who, can make some shots. Let me just check. What's Lou Dort shooting in the playoffs? Because I know in the regular season, he had this massive upswing in terms of efficiency and also volume in 3-point shooting, which
he's
made
definitely
him
had some games. Was it game 5 against Denver that the moonball 3 that touched the jumbotron 3s were going in for him. Might have been in game 4, but can't keep past games straight. There's been too much basketball. But Nesmith at the same time, his scoring volume went up dramatically when the playoffs kicked off. And that first round, I want to say, was like 19 points per game. Compared to like, that's why I like to have my numbers up in front of me. Compared to the regular season, where I want to say it was closer to like 12 or 14. So he's been incredibly good and been one of the top playoff risers, I would say.
Yeah. So from 3, Dort struggled through the first 2 series and then has come right in the conference finals. Whereas, as you say, Nesmith, first round 14 of 25 is good for 50. I'm looking at the wrong. 14 of 27 is 52%. Second round 13 of 29 is 45%, and then in the conference finals 16 of 30 for 53%. Like the 3 balls are absolutely fucking falling for the dude.
I'm willing to put Indiana in the lead here. I'm willing to say this is an Indiana advantage.
Let's do it. Like this kind of player is prone to a comeback down to earth. Like I don't know if he's going to shoot 50% from 3 for the entire playoffs. But if he does, and if we're judging him based on the track record that he's created himself through the first 3 rounds, then I do think that he's offering maybe a little more offensive value than what Lou Dort is. But in saying that, don't you think that there's a case to be made where if we're going down in terms of importance, that Alex Caruso is actually the next guy that we should be comparing?
I did consider that. I was looking at minutes per game initially, and I would say that there's also a fair case to be made that Nesmith should have been matched up against Chet. Chet being the 3rd most important Thunder, Nesmith being the 3rd most important Pacer. But I kind of wanted to keep this a little bit more like starter versus starter, position versus position. And Caruso's funny. And I said this in a pod with Aaron. Like, when the Thunder really need Caruso, they can ramp him up. But when things are rolling, Caruso, like, his minutes dip. It's like, okay, cool. We've got the offense clicking. Kason Wallace or Wiggins or someone else is hitting, and like it'll be weird. You're like, hey, wasn't Caruso just the most important player for you last series? He's like, oh, now he's like your 3rd guy off the bench and not getting any minutes. You're like, okay, that's the versatility that depth provides you.
Yeah, I think in terms of minutes, he was like 9th on the Thunder's picking order in the regular season, and so like he's absolutely just like a guy that they bring out like when needed, And like when they need what he gives, then like, okay, now you're going to play 37 minutes, and you're going to close, and you're going to be, carry us. You're going to defend Nikola Jokic and stop everything. And then like when they're like, okay, we're up 10, maybe we won't bring you out, and you can just play 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like on average.
Kayson Wallace got more minutes than him in the last series. You didn't even. As also, Hartenstein got his minutes slashed, and I was kind of wondering if maybe that is a case for Caruso to start in the finals. I do think that it's kind of a little bit cleaner of a matchup. If Hartenstein comes off the bench, you're able to put Chet on, then Turner. You're able to put Williams on Pascal, and then you're able to play both Caruso and Dort to kind of chase around and tag team him, defend some of the Indiana guards or some wings. What do you think about that as a potential day one shift in the starting lineup?
There is the perspective of, you don't make, preempt an adjustment. You go with what you do until it's proven to be false, because you don't know that it will be proven false. But I definitely agree that just pure matchup wise, if you were ignoring everything that had come before, and just trying to put the best 5 guys out there, that would be the 5. And there's always the thing of like, you can start Hartenstein and play him 12 minutes throughout the entire game, and then Caruso closes. So maybe that's what they go to begin with. But Mark Daigneault is a guy that will try some shit, and so maybe that could be the way that it ends up. Especially with Hartenstein being a more limited player in terms of being out on the floor against this Pacers team, who has so much, can get so many system buckets by having guys in different positions,
pushing the tempo.
Yeah, which Chet would be a much better suited big man to go against.
Yeah, and I don't want to just take anything from Hartenstein. Hartenstein was brought in to fill and service a purpose, which was to get them past the double big teams in the West, which they went through Memphis, who played both Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey. Not like those are the powerhouse of 4 or 5 combos, but like that's a too big lineup that you have to have a true big body for. Then they go up against Jokic and Aaron Gordon. You kind of need to have both bigs out there for that. That's why you brought in Hartenstein, and
until they realized that you could just put a guard on Jokic because he's that good.
Because Caruso is insane.
Yeah.
But then you get to play the Wolves with Gobert, Naz Reid, Randall. Like Hartenstein has served his function incredibly well in the series that he was brought in for. The idea that you were going to play a fast break, super paced team in Indiana probably wasn't really something that OKC was like really trying to figure out. Hey, how do we plan for this? What, and to be fair, OKC won the regular season matchups by an average of 13.5 points per game. So this is as much an exercise in trying to celebrate the players as it is a exercise in futility and talking about how Indiana stands a chance in this series, because it shouldn't be long. But I still, they got here, and they got here through depth, and that's something I want to celebrate, kind of by matching up these guys like player by player.
Yeah. So, did you want to continue down the depth, or do you want to go big picture?
Well, there are a couple more interesting matchups. But now it does get a little bit squirrely, because just to stay on like roughly positionally alignments, we can go with Isaiah Hartenstein versus Obi Toppin, who got his revenge against the Knicks. He does provide a lot for Indiana and allowing them to kind of play smaller with both him and Pascal on the floor together, or him and Turner. His 3-point shot has come a long ways. I don't believe it is great, but he does give spacing options. And as far as like a fast break 4-5 man for the Pacers, he does present a lot of challenges. Do you think this might be a way for them to press an advantage, or is this just going to be another time where Hartenstein gets his minutes cut and the Thunder go small and play Kendrick Williams more?
I mean, I think that probably will be the case. But if we're talking about what Topham can provide, I think that you actually do hit on a potential advantage for the Pacers. The OKC defense was like historic, all-time good. But if you go into the splits, it's really the half-court defense that is just impossible to score against, whereas the transition defense isn't like quite on that same level. And so if we're talking about ways that Indiana can find an advantage against this team, which is probably clearly a lot more talented than they are, it's got to be through transition. Like, they do need to push the ball, and Obi Toppin is this athletic guy who can run as a big and can also space the floor. I think is like one way that they could maybe look to get an advantage. Because if Indiana are really going to score, they need to be pushing the ball. They need to be getting it in transition, not going against the OKC in the half court, and then creating feedback loops that way where they can have their defense set.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the idea of Indiana being at their best also being one of OKC's weaker points. Not a lot of weak points for a team that just ran through the West. And what? They swept their first round, right?
Let's say.
Yeah. OKC swept through the West, right? Or not swept through the West. They swept through Memphis. So I'm trying to count up how many games they lost. So they beat.
Yeah, they've lost 4 games.
4 games in the playoffs. And what did they finish the regular season with? Was it 68 wins?
That sounds right. I'll double check it for you since I've got my handy very fast working stats up here.
Ooh,
where I can confirm this
oh,
that
I
they
live
did
in
in
a
fact win
city.
just as we both knew, 68 games.
Okay, 68 games, which means they lost 14. So right now they have lost 18 games on the year. I don't think Indiana's pushing this to them having lost more than 20. But, they don't have a lot of holes. But the closest thing they have to a hole is that transition defense, that fast break defense. And that is one of the things Indiana does the best. And it could force them into some interesting matchups because Caruso, as much as we love him and are getting to him now, I think we would both take Hartenstein over Turner, right? Or over Toppin, yeah. As much as he presents an interesting matchup. But now as we move to Caruso versus Nesmith, I don't have any clever cross comparison for these two, but I think they're probably the next most important pieces that are relatively the same position. Caruso is a devastating defensive player, but he's not incredibly quick. And he's not like the most fast breaky guys. Like, he does a lot of great jobs when players try to put a post up on him or try to, go at him with the jab step or something in isolation. Like, it does hurt a little bit of his defensive value if you can push the tempo against him.
Yeah, like the way that he's really effective is because he's so destructive at like reading your plays, and like he can pop up in the right place at all the freaking time. Or if you just try to play through a player, that he can just guard really well and make it impossible for them. Whereas getting in transition where everything's a little bit more free flowing, like he is, unfortunately also one of like the best transition defensive players at his size. So we're talking about relative weaknesses here. But like that is one way that you can mitigate his defensive value.
He's going to just be matched up against Pascal in that half court. Pascal's going to try to drive on him. It's not going to work. But if you can keep the offense flowing, I really wanted to do Caruso versus TJ McConnell. It just happens to be the battle of the bench white guys. But there's still Nesmith as a starter or to match up against. And I don't know that I would say that Nesmith provides more value, but I think he's got to be a better player than Caruso.
I disagree. I just think Alex Caruso is such a incredibly impactful and valuable player.
I think Alex Caruso is a top 50 player. We know this about you.
I'd probably take Alex Caruso over anyone except Tyrese and Pascal.
On Indiana's whole roster. You would take him over.
Yeah. I think he's more impactful than Miles Turner or
and on OKC's roster?
Probably what, 5th? 4th?
Yeah, I feel like you'd take him over Dort.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting when we come to off-season rankings and like it's like you have him unranked, Aaron has him like 80, and I've got him like 37.
Whoa. What are we talking about? My Lakers biases and past Lakers love.
All right.
There's no way I'm leaving just gonna leave him out to cold like that. But I will say there's limitations, and there is a reason why when things are going well and the kind of wild card bench pieces for OKC are playing well, they can scale back his minutes. And like, you know, he provides a really good service with his defense, but you know, the offense is flawed. The offense is not great. It's a lot of the times. What game did he have that he dropped 20? Is that the first Denver game? I remember the second.
Yeah, but I mean, like for the role that he plays, like people have him the sort of anchoring because he came into the league as a point guard. But like if you look at the role that he plays and the lineups that he's used with, he's like basically playing the 3 or the 4. And so if you're comparing his offense to other power forwards, then he's like one of the best you know, passes.
No.
He's a
dial it back.
Shooter.
Dial it back. He is not one of the best in anything for a power forward.
He's an above average ball handler, a right around average shooter.
His limitations are less of a problem as a
if you compare him to the least skilled position, which is kind of what he's playing, then yes. But you talk about Nembhard, who is also a playoff riser of sorts.
Oh yeah, I was going to say I was talking about Nesmith, but you're calling back to even earlier.
Or even you talk about McConnell, and you're trying to find ways that Indiana can have an advantage. I actually do think that the ball pressure of a Nembhard and of a TJ McConnell, which affected the Knicks so greatly, you know, where they couldn't have Halliburton bring the ball up and they had to go to some of these more deficient ball handlers who really struggled against that ball pressure. I do think that the likes of Alex Caruso is going to be forced to bring the ball up against this oppressive ball pressure that the Pacers play. And I do think that is actually one of the advantages that Indiana can press against the OKC offense, is in the same way that they did it against the Knicks, who have one really good ball handler and then like several guys who are kind of decent. Mikal Bridges got harassed and struggled against the ball pressure. Josh Hart bringing the ball up got harassed and struggled against the ball pressure. I think you'll see the same thing from Cason Wallace, from Alex Caruso, maybe even from Jalen Williams, having to bring the ball up and struggling against that ball pressure.
That's interesting. Let's shift this more towards the big picture and the ways that teams can have advantages, is because the idea of pressuring OKC, I don't know that I entirely think that that's going to be that effective. Caruso is not a great ball handler for a guard, but I feel like OKC just has enough or multiple ball handlers. Like if you were playing Chet at center more, it's not like a Hartenstein can't bring the ball up every now and then, but like Chet bring the ball up against a Miles Turner, J Dub bringing the ball up against Mr. Pascal Siakam. At some point you start to work your way down the list, and someone gets to bring the ball up against Tyrese Halliburton, who, by all accounts, hustled well, played, above his head defense, in ways where
he
he can be
really did.
targeted. Yeah, like he's a guy that in the regular season I think you would target. In the playoffs, he upped the effort and played much better. Probably the weakest defender of Indiana's starting lineup still, but like
he went from huge liability to played really well.
Yeah. But like at some point, you're going to have a ball handler that I think can handle his level of pressure, and I don't think OKC is too scared of all of that. So I think speed's an advantage for Indiana. But I wonder if OKC counters Indiana's speed with size and rebounding. Do you think size and rebounding could win a game for the Thunder?
That is a good point. There are maybe that speaks more to OKC's versatility, whereas Indiana has this very defined way that they're going to play, this very defined way that they're going to succeed, which is playing fast, spread floor, these system buckets, ball pressure defensively, trying to get you into your sets late so that you're at 9 seconds before your play even begins. We know what they're going to do. Whereas OKC maybe does have a few more wrinkles that it can expose, that it can exploit, going big. And we saw Indiana go to Tony Bradley, who had good minutes for them. We saw them to Thomas Bryant, these like fringe NBA players, like who before this playoffs you would have said like this is like a replacement level guy. This is a guy that you can pick up in free agency for nothing. And we saw them have really good minutes against New York. If they're now going up against Hartenstein, like Miles Turner is not a good defensive rebounder, and Hartenstein is a very good offensive rebounder. And so, like, there's an advantage. Tony Bradley, I think, might have gotten hurt in that last game. And so, like, it's Thomas Bryant, also not a great defensive rebounder. And then you throw in these guys like Cason Wallace is an elite offensive rebounder at the guard position. Jalen Williams can get offensive rebounds. Caruso at his position is a very good offensive rebounder. Like there are a lot of guys that can attack the glass. And I think that could be another advantage that OKC can exploit. I do think you're right that way.
Yeah, it's definitely a high possibility. They are going to have more size. And it's not like a lot of teams, either of these teams really have a ton of depth up front. I mean, Indiana behind Miles Turner goes to Obi Toppin, then goes to Thomas Bryant. And then you're right, Tony Bradley was playing. And Bradley played good. Bryant got hurt in the middle of the series and then came back. And then Bradley got hurt at the end of the series. And I'm now remembering in the last game, there was a knee-to-knee collision with Nesmith. And I meant to check on if there's been any updates because he went out and then came back. But he was grimacing when he went out. And if Indiana's going to be hurting with Nesmith, that might be a problem. But one of the advantages I think for Indiana, and I hope you've got the stats there, is the three-point shooting. Because as much as OKC can really pour it on and rain it in from deep, a lot of their guys are not the greatest of shooters. They've got kind of this offense that gets generated by their defenses and their steals, and then the half-court Shea's mid-range game. But like, Thomas Bryant came off the bench against the Knicks last night and went 3 for 3 in the first 5 minutes of action from deep. Like the Pacers have no end of guys who can shoot from three, and you got to kind of watch all of them. Is there a good three-point shooting, a good enough three-point shooting game out there for the Pacers to where they can press that advantage and maybe get a game or two off of just high volume threes that are going in at a high rate.
Yeah, for sure. Like that is one way that you can overcome a talent advantage is by giving yourself that increased variance by putting up volume threes. Threes are more than two if you take more than your teammates, and you know they sometimes will go and they sometimes won't. But if they can, then there's a way that you can make up a disadvantage. And so, like for sure, that is a way that Indiana can steal games is they can be a high volume 3-point shooting team, which OKC like really can't. You mentioned SGA's old schoolness, the fact that he like doesn't want to shoot threes, he wants to work into the mid range, and same thing with Jalen Williams. Chet is probably the only guy that's going to shoot an above average 3-point rate for their position, whereas Indiana, they're going to play basically five guys at all times that can shoot the three. And they create system 3-pointers as well. And Tyrese Halliburton demands so much attention that you can get guys wide open to shoot 50% from three. And if you're making threes and they're able to get those buckets, and OKC is taking twos or they're taking free throws, then like eventually you lose the math problem.
I hate to say it, but I think when it eventually comes down to it, though, we do have the evolutionary advancements, the 2020 versions of the 90s Chicago Bulls, those original couple of years where you've got Shea in the Jordan role attacking the basket, a young Scottie Pippen, and people forget, like, they think of Scottie Pippen as the end stage throughout the whole 90s run. No, the first title, like, Pippen was just starting to come into his own in Jay Will. You've got this team that's predicated on its defense, its mid-range scoring in OKC versus the 2020 version of the D'Antoni Suns, a point guard who runs this fast up-tempo offense that rains in a bunch of threes. And we know how that worked out for all of these franchises before. And I think we're going to see history repeat itself where the OKC Thunder pull away with this one rather easily. I'm willing to go on the record and say I think it's OKC in 5. Aaron texted and agreed OKC in 5. Dylan, DJ Augustine Bull, where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, like we've spent this entire podcast sort of talking around the fact, and trying to find counterpoints to this clear conclusion that OKC has this huge advantage. They're heavy favorites, and they should be. They were the best regular season team. They've been the best playoff team. They've got all this versatility, all these ways that they can win, and so they are the heavy favorite. But I'm willing to go on the record, and I'm still going to pick OKC. But I'm going to go in 6. I think Indiana can get a couple games that they do have counter punches that they can throw at OKC, which will give them success. I think ultimately, like, the talent wins out, but I don't think this is going to be the, people picking sweeps or people picking, maybe Indiana gets hot in one game and they take it to 5. Like, I think this is going to be a closer series than maybe what people expect. I think Indiana will get a couple games. But ultimately, I will still go with the Thunder.
So you're thinking it's going to be a point differential that's less than like 10 points per game when it's all said and done. OKC does get the extra wins, so like the point differential is going to be higher, but like, not quite as bad. Whereas I'm a little bit more in the camp of I think OKC is going to win by double digits multiple of these games and run Indiana out the building. And I think that's sad because I do really want to celebrate what the Pacers did. And I think the Pacers are going to have a lot of doubters. I think the Pacers are going to have a lot of people who say like they got lucky. The Cavs had every one of their team get hurt. Like, Garland was out, Mobley was out for a couple of those games. They came back, they went themselves. Mitchell got hurt. They didn't have to go through the Celtics because the Celtics all imploded. And whether it's the Brown meniscus tear, the Tatum injury at the end, the Porzingis Savannah flu, or whatever he had going on, and that he was constantly ill for. And then Damian Lillard in the first round. Like the Pacers got a lot of lucky breaks. I think people will be very critical of them for that. But I do think the Pacers have seized the moment. They have played above the means and risen at the right moments and shown a lot of grit and tenacity. And I think the Pacers should be looked at as a top team in the East next couple of years.
Yeah. Did you see all the Pacers Black Magic memes?
I didn't see the Black Magic memes, but former podcast host Richard did send me a text that in New York there are witches who are offering their services to curse the Pacers as a counter to Black Magic memes. So there are Knick fans posting their receipts to have gotten that Game 5 victory.
Oh wow! So they're going to cancel out. There's the New York Witches against the OKC's Black Magic. Sorry, against the Pacers Black Magic.
Yeah,
it could cancel out and negate that effect.
Yeah, I did see people being like, "Man, they're sacrificing in Caitlin Clark's hamstrings. Like, how desperate is Indiana for this?" Which is pretty desperate. Aaron is texting me currently at the moment. Got the phone up over here with this note that at the All-Star break, the San Antonio Spurs, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Philadelphia 76ers had better odds to win the finals than the Indiana Pacers.
Good God.
That is
the freaking wild. Spurs.
The 76ers. Haliburton turned it on late in the year, but he turned it on.
Yeah. The most underrated player in the NBA. And me and Aaron picked it. We said coming into the season, this is a top 10 NBA player. And he's been doubted all season long and has come out the other end.
I want to let you know, Ben Golliver, the Washington Post, and the Greatest of All Talk podcast had the question posed to him of, will Tyrese Haliburton be a top 8 player next year? And he was on the fence. And then Hallie had another great game, and Sharp had to push it one step further and say, is top 8 too low? Is this going to be a top 5 player? Is he going to take over Luka Doncic's spot in the top 10?
Second best point guard in the NBA, man.
Kings fans, if you ever want fan amnesty to go to the Pacers, I think now is the moment. You will be looked at a little bit as bandwagon fans, but also you were there first. I think you get to have this one.
All right, is that us?
I think that's us. Dylan, where can people find you?
Every week on the Hoops Temple podcast. Holding out hope for the Indiana Pacers.
Let's go. Pacers in 6. Yes, sirs. Find me, Nate _Hoops Temple on TikTok. You can email the show, hoopstemple@gmail.com. We're going to have to get ready for the offseason. If you've got some offseason takes, let us know them. Thanks for listening.